Hi everyone, my name is Avia Gray and I'm a type 1 diabetic. Today I'm going to show you how diabetics eat food. Now I know it seems a little strange to make a video over how someone eats their food, but for someone with a chronic illness, especially for type 1 diabetes, there's kind of a lengthy process involved. So I'll be showing you the process that we have to go through every day, for every meal, for any time we consume anything with any amount of carbs in it. And it actually takes a little longer than most people would imagine. So first, let me back up and explain what type 1 diabetes is. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease characterized by dysfunction of the pancreas. So your pancreas produces insulin, and without it, you end up with high blood sugar. You end up with elevated glucose, and that can take a toll on your body, especially if it stays elevated for too long. Because there's dysfunction of the pancreas, we have to take artificial insulin to kind of do the job that the pancreas would normally do. So I'm going to show you just kind of meal prep and what normally goes into taking shots and just having a meal for a type 1 diabetic. So here's what you're going to need. Food, obviously. A glucometer with a lancing device, test strips, and extra lancets, alcohol prep pads, and of course insulin. There's different ways to administer insulin, but I use a insulin pen. So first you want to start off with your food. So here I have kidney beans with turkey, grilled chicken if you can see it, cabbage with mushrooms and sausage. So you want to start off with your food because you have to get a carb count. Carbs are what makes your glucose elevated. So in this meal altogether, you can just look it up on the internet if you don't know it off the bat. After a while, it just kind of becomes second nature. But this meal here has a total of 30 carbs, and 22 of those come from the kidney beans. They're full of carbs, full of fiber, not necessarily a bad thing. You do need carbohydrates to survive, but that is what elevates your glucose, and you want to make sure you get enough insulin to compensate for that meal. Next, I'm going to show you how we use the glucometer for the meal. So, as I showed you earlier, you're going to have a glucometer. This is the one I use. I just like it because it uses a lot less blood than most other of the types of glucometers. You need a lancing device. That's what gets the blood out. You need test strips. They come with the glucometer sometimes, but they're pretty expensive, so I hope I get this right the first time. And then you need extra lancets. So what you're going to do is start off by taking out the old lancet in the lancing device and replacing it with a new one. Right? So it has this little cap on there so you're not just like sticking yourself with needles randomly before it's time. So you just pull the lancing device off, or the cap to the lancet off, and just replace the top. Right? So if you look here, I'm trying to get myself in there. If you look here, there's a little number right there. And that just shows how deep you want the needle to be inserted into your skin. So if you crank it all the way up, this one goes up to 4. It goes in pretty deep, and if you have like rough hands, or if they're calloused or anything, that can be something that's helpful. Over time, you acquire enough sticks on your fingers or whatever, and it makes it difficult to draw blood. But right now, I think my hands are pretty good, so I'm going to keep it at 1. And I have really sensitive skin. I really hate needles, actually, so that's interesting there. Okay, so what you do is just pull back on this. That kind of like cocks the needle back. You hear that click. And as soon as you're ready to test, you press this button here, and it's going to inject the needle really quickly, just click into your skin. Right? So before we do that, we got to prep our glucometer. So this is the device here. It's like a little computer, and it uses these test strips to compute your current blood sugar. I really don't know all the mechanisms behind how that happens, but there's a lot of technology involved. But this is what one of the test strips looks like. And there's a little place, you just insert it into the glucometer, and it'll let you know. So here it's a drop of blood and a picture of the test strip, and it lets you know that it's ready for testing. Okay. What you also want to do is prep your skin. So I admit I don't do this every single time, but it is good hygiene to just kind of make sure there's no extra dirt or anything that can cause an infection when you expose your skin. Right? So make sure that's dry. Lancing device, finger. And you just kind of draw a drop of blood out. And then you're going to take your test strip, and on either side there's a little wing there, and that's what just kind of draws up the blood. So you basically just touch the test strip to the blood, and it'll give you a number. So currently my blood sugar is 102. So that's an important number when we get to calculating how much insulin we need to take. Now's the fun part. Now is when we actually take the insulin. So that number 102 is used to calibrate how much insulin I need to give. They're measured in units, and you can see how the units are. They're on the outside of the pen. This is an insulin pen, and it's filled with short-acting insulin. It's kind of upside down. There we go. It's filled with short-acting insulin. Basically, this type of insulin peaks at about 2 hours, and it quickly leaves your system. And the only job it does is to take out the carbs and the glucose and the sugar that you're ingesting from when you consume, to get the amount of sugar and glucose to the right spots in your body, or to like leave your system. Sometimes this is done, it's kind of a checks and balance system. So if you have too high of glucose, it's going to excrete from your liver or from your urine and through your feces. Ugh, I don't even like that word, but that's what happens. And if it continues to go through your urine and your intestinal tract, it can cause damage, just high levels of sugar. So this is really important. So I take this every time I eat. Now, for calculating how much of it I need to take, I have a formula that my doctor gave me. It varies from person to person. Not everyone's going to have the same formula, and it really just depends on how insulin resistant your body is, or how much food you eat, or what exercise you get on a daily basis, just how stressed you are. Anything that can affect your blood sugar is going to contribute to this formula. Okay, so for my formula, I take my current blood sugar, which is 102, and you subtract 100 from it, so that would be 2, and you divide it by 30. So yeah, there's going to be like some negative numbers going on there, but that just reduces the amount of insulin that you need from your meal. So my meal has, like we said, 30 carbs in it. You take the 30 carbs and you divide that by 8. 6 times? And then we have our formula. We divide that by 30. You can't really divide the negative numbers, but basically if it goes into the negative, you take off 2, is what I was told by my doctor. But you can have a different formula. Like I said, each person's different. That's really especially important, that basal rate, the one that you divide your blood sugar in, if it's pretty high. So right now, that's a good number, 102. It might be a little high, like fasting glucose for a normal person, but for someone with diabetes, you want to keep in between 100 and 130 for your blood sugar level. So I'll just add or take away 2. So for my whole meal, I'm going to inject only 4 units, 4 units of insulin. And then, but if my blood sugar were like 200 or like 300, 400, it does get to that level. That's really where that second formula, the blood sugar formula, comes in handy. And oftentimes if you get sick or if you're stressed, even if you haven't eaten, anything can like spike your blood sugar up, and so you need to take a correction dose, and that's what that is, the correction dose. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take my insulin. So it comes with this, I just tore it off, but it comes with this little cap on here for like sanitary reasons. You just peel it off. On the top here, it's kind of like a sponge thing in the middle, and that's where this needle in the middle of this one goes. So you put the pin cap on. It's got this extra covering underneath. Again, that's just for sanitary reasons. You don't want to have an infected needle or anything. And you pull this off, and that exposes the needle. So where do we inject? Well, I'll show you. I like to inject my insulin in my stomach, so you get to see my tummy today. But people often like to do it maybe the back of their arm, sometimes like on the outside of their thigh. It just kind of depends on where it's most comfortable for you, but it definitely has to be in a kind of fatty area, and that's going to be the best place. If you don't inject directly into your bloodstream, that'll cause some really bad damage to your veins. So I just pick an area. Sometimes I get little bruises, but that's okay. Pick an area, stick the needle in, and you click back to how many units you need. Mine is on 4. Leave it in for 10 seconds just to make sure you get all the insulin that you are supposed to have. And that's that. So I hope you are now aware of what the process is for a type 1 diabetic just to eat a meal on a daily basis. This was a little bit drawn out because I'm simply explaining myself to you all, so it doesn't take nearly that long usually, but sometimes, you know, you can come across areas where you're kind of bruised and it takes a little bit longer, or if you're out in public, you have to like excuse yourself or just kind of, you know, freak people out with your injections or whatever, but there's just a lot that goes to it, so I just kind of want to raise awareness of that. All right, thanks for watching.